Can you hear me? Yes. Apologize for this little pause. Well, thank you to IIF for this new edition and the opportunity given to Maor Bezner present ECOncrete. First, I would like to introduce Maor. He is an industrial designer with expertise in harmonizing environmental and technical needs for marine infrastructure. He has proven track record in developing and refining technologies to enable mass production. Maor joined ECOncrete in 2019 and leads the R&D and project assimilation. When you were still a student at uni, I think you've got enrolled into ECOncrete, which makes not such a long time ago.
No, not at all. Thank you very much, Raphaël and IFF and the foundation for having me here. Yeah.
Yeah. So now back to the presentation of the session called Building the Ocean of Tomorrow, Nature Inclusive Marine Infrastructure. So 70% of marine infrastructure is concrete, based including ports, seawalls, breakwaters, subsea cable and pipes, and offshore energy foundations. Could you please explain how does the dominance of concrete in marine infrastructure currently affect marine biodiversity and coastal ecosystems?
Yes. If you'd all just look to the right, you can see a mega pier made out of concrete that is holding in place and protecting this city's beautiful assets. It's a very widely used material. The reason for that is it's cheap, durable, easy to shape, and will stay there for a long time. It's not so good for the marine environment for several reasons. The first, it's an adverse material to the marine environment. And secondly, it's shaped in a way that is very unconventional in nature. You do not have flat, straight surfaces. But because it's the material of choice for construction, it's a very easy medium to manipulate and to make it better and longer lasting for the marine environment it's placed in. And I have to say, it's a very emotional day for me in a good way, because as Raphaël said, one of my first projects was here, not in this marina, in the other marina. And just today, as I was coming in, I live in Brooklyn, so the weather's amazing. And I went to see a new project we have here that I might talk about in a little bit. And you can just grab us up and pedal and see the impact. So this is amazing to see also that the Monaco is investing in its assets in a very straightforward way.
Well, thanks for the transition, because my next question would be, we would like to know more about ECOncrete and its solution. So how does ECOncrete modify traditional concrete infrastructure to make it more supportive for marine life?
Well, it's actually, the company was formed almost already 15 years ago by two marine biologists. And they were diving in the Red Sea, and they realized that certain assets have coral growing on it and certain do not. Being scientists, they said, okay, there must be a reason for this, went into the paperwork of the projects and started isolating what it is inside the concrete that is not so good for the marine environment. And that's how they came up with the admixture. Now, our proprietary and patented admixture is added at a rate of 10% of the cementitious material. So basically, any concrete mix around the world, we can add this admixture. And what it does, it creates it bio-enhanced, longer lasting, and traditionally 10% stronger. Then, after the concrete has been treated and it's relatively neutral, it's just a matter of recreating the natural habitats on the, I need to speak louder. It's just a matter of recreating the natural habitats on the concrete itself. So we like to say it's easy as 1, 2, 3. Obviously, a lot of research has gone into it. And after isolating the ingredients to bio-enhance concrete, the next stage was learning how to work with the developers themselves.
Well, thank you. So could you give us some few examples of projects where ECOncrete solutions have already been implemented, including one, as you mentioned, located not too far from here?
So I'll save the best for last, obviously, but I'll start from the right side of the screen. If you could back one slide, yeah. So there's many different ways to utilize concrete in the water, and you can see behind me several examples. So on your right, it's a very traditional breakwater. This breakwater specifically is the living breakwater. It protects Staten Island. It was decided to build it after Hurricane Sandy, and it's a amazing project for several reasons. First and foremost, it protects the people of Tottenville. Secondly, everything beneath the mid-high water has ECOncrete's technology in it, meaning that anything below the mid-high water is actually active habitat for the local flora and fauna. To add insult to injury, if you're building something in the water of New York, for every square meter of habitat you take away, you owe the state of New York a pretty hefty sum. So if this project was $120 million in construction, the mitigation fees for taking away habitat for this project were 18 million. The incorporation of our technology in 20% of the breakwaters managed to reduce those mitigations to zero, meaning that the implementation of ECOncrete's technology in this specific project, which is on my left, helped save quite a lot of money, and I'm actually pretty excited because we're going monitoring there next month when it's a bit warmer. So that'll be amazing. Another kind of protection is revetments, which is the next one you can see. And this is the one you have here in Larvotto Beach, the one I mentioned that I went to see today. It's a single layer interlocking armor unit, which is a very technical term for a heavy piece of concrete that holds earth in place. What's unique about it is because we've utilized engineering and biology, we managed to, with less material, create greater stability and introduce habitat into an eroded environment that I'm talking about the picture, not Larvotto. Larvotto is a different story, but it has the same unit. But we managed to get more stability and habitat at the same time. So that was my comment about learning how to work with developers, because developers, their main pain is, oh boy, how do I use it? Is it gonna be harder? Am I gonna have to pay more for it? And we've worked very hard to make sure that not only they don't work harder, they work less hard and are able to monetize more on their own assets. The next picture you see there in the middle is South Battery Park. South Battery Park is the tip of Manhattan, where we've just finished this part of the project and actually just yesterday signed the next extension of North Battery Park. And it's another very interesting story about how resiliency and impact meet each other with local construction. Basically, it's a seawall. Because Manhattan is prone to flood, they needed to protect it and make the water line higher. And the last example is land stabilization. This project is interesting because the citizens of this neighborhood, basically their neighborhood was eroding and being eroded and eaten by the sea. So they asked that their money is used in an environmentally sensitive way. So they didn't just say, hey, we want our homes and assets protected. They said, we want to do it in a manner that we will achieve also our environmental and sustainable goals. And this solution caters to all of those. Because like I said in the beginning, cheap, durable, easy to shape. That's why 7 times out of 10, it's the material of choice. And if you build it in the right way, it also has great environmental benefits.
Thank you, Maor. It's very interesting. So I would like now to address the question of scalability and implementation. What are the main barriers to scaling nature-positive marine infrastructure and at a global level?
That is a great question. I'll divide it into two. So the first one, it needs to be easy to use, okay? A lot of times when you're introducing a new technology, especially to a very conservative environment, the local stakeholders, they're worried, are you gonna take my work away from me? Am I going to lose jobs in my district? And I'm generalizing this. I work a lot in the US, but it's the same here in Europe. No one wants to give away work, especially if it's civil infrastructure. So the most important part about our technology is that we always use local manufacturers. For Larvoto, we're using a precaster that I believe is not more than 100 kilometers away from here. For several reasons. A, when you make concrete, you always want to make it as close as possible to your asset. You don't want to pay for shipping it. That just multiplies the event. On the right here, you can see Cala Rajada. Cala Rajada has no big stones, okay? So a precaster in Cala Rajada, Mallorca made all of those units. Just so you can grasp the scale of our projects. The units they made are bigger than the tractor that is trying to move them, which, by the way, didn't work, but it's a different story. In the middle, you can see units like you have here in Larvoto, and they were manufactured by the port's unionized labor in San Diego. And the biggest part to make it scalable is to make it simple, that every concrete manufacturer in the world can use it. I believe the second one the second part of my answer is how scalable is the solution and how big is the market. So marine construction market is estimated to be around 650 billion annual market. Out of that, in regulated areas like Europe and the US, I would say 350 billion. If you cut that into only concrete, 115. And concrete touching the water is around $770 billion market annually. That is a lot of concrete that can be translated into a lot of habitat. So if we were to service just 1% of that market, we're talking about 770 million annually. That's supposed to grow to around 1.5 billion by 2033. So because it's such a scalable solution, the addressable market is also very significant.
Thank you, Maor. Would be also interesting to know how do costs compare between conventional marine concrete and ECOncrete solutions, if you can elaborate on this.
Yeah, the million-dollar question. So manufacturing is more or less the same. And when I say more or less, usually when you reach a new precaster and you tell them, okay, here's a new product, they treat it with a bit of suspicion. I don't know, I'm accumulating risk. I'll add this and that, 10 to 20% just because of the risk I have. And but it's traditional. They're doing exactly the same. And you're introducing a new line of product to their repertoire, if you want. So over time, the price goes down to more or less the same as regular concrete. But the real question is who monetizes on using this, because this is not regular concrete. So like the living breakwater example, or Cala Rajada, or San Diego, or the offshore market that I will talk in a bit, the utilization of nature-inclusive design and habitat on your asset can be both quantified and later on capitalized on. And each region has a different mechanisms. So whether or not you're going to end up paying more, between nothing to 15 or 20% more on your concrete infrastructure, the overall asset will, I think in 100% of our, I don't know, 100% is a lot of percentages, but I would say in the majority of the projects that our technology has been implemented in, our clients have been able to monetize on a tenfold to what they invested in the concrete itself.
Thank you. So at IIF, we are willing to hear about the impact the activity generates. So could you tell us what ecological improvements have you observed in projects using ECOncrete technology?
Yes. So I like this slide. It shows it pretty clearly. On the right, you have outside of the water, regular block. Next to it, or underneath it, you have our block. And you can just see that the amount of surface area and habitat opportunity is a tenfold. So we usually will have at least 2 times, if not more, biodiversity on our assets. The water filtration level will rise by also a tenfold. Biodiversity is somewhere between 2 to 5 times as much, depends on the installation site. And I think we have a movie, a small video at the end of the slide that shows it's better than me throwing around statistics. If anyone is interested in the percentages and the Latin name of the specific species, I would be more than happy to share all that information.
Well, now we should, I think, hear about finance, right? Because we want to hear about numbers. So what are the numbers of the company you could share?
Yeah. So our revenue has been growing by 2x almost for the last 4 years. Our average deal size today is around $500,000. Just this quarter alone, we secured 4 million in contracts, and we're hoping to finish this year with at least 10 million more. So that is in a nutshell.
And maybe the last question on my side would be, what's the outlook for ECOncrete? What do you foresee in the next 10 years?
So maybe if I go back to the little bit, if you could show the video at the end. I think the outlook is pretty blue because, as I said, the addressable market is immense. And if in the past the problem, I would start the pitch by saying the problem is putting concrete in the water. I would say that's no longer what I say. The problem is being able to put concrete in the water because you're not allowed to put it in Natura 2000 or in heavily mitigated areas. And we're already seeing this being taken into account in master plans. For instance, the Port of San Francisco is building a 7-mile long seawall, okay? Mile is 1.6 kilometers, so I'm very bad at math, but I'm gonna say it's over 10 kilometers of a concrete seawall. This is just in the next 2-3 years. So the growth potential is exponential.
So maybe we have time for a couple of questions. Anyone else would like to ask a question to Maor? Everything was very clear.
Well, I know the company quite well, obviously, but maybe a question for you, Maor, is can you be more specific on the different markets of ECOncrete?
Yes. So we separated into 3 markets: coastal, waterfronts, and offshore. What you see in front of you is an example of the offshore market. Offshore is anything making gas, oil, wind energy, and these assets need to be protected. They're heavy, they're durable. So just the magnitude, we manufactured 1,500 of these last winter, and all of them are going to be transformed into habitat. So the offshore and the energy sector is something that is growing exponentially. We just saw in Berlin this year that the EU is committed to around 35 gigawatts of energy from the marine environment. That is 10 times, that's not 10 times. That's 3 times what they have today. And as we see all around the world, like we're seeing in Manhattan, San Francisco, erosion is a big deal. So that is the urban waterfronts, where people just have to physically build walls in front of their cities. And the resilience market is breakwaters, like the Living Breakwater project. So those are the 3 sectors. And on top of that, I would venture to say that there is another avenue, which is quantifying and capitalizing on the habitat that you create. That is something that we are developing as we speak, because if you went and you put in all the effort, and when I say effort, I usually mean capital, to do something better for the environment, you need to be able to show what you did, and that is sometimes even more, I wouldn't go as saying it's more important, but it is almost as important in putting the effort and building something in a responsible way in the first place.
Another question. Since we have you on stage for the foundation, and I know what the foundation does because we spoke about it, but I think, can you elaborate for a hot second on how do you make that investment decision? Obviously, you have a natural interest here for your own habitat, but how do you make that investment decision to scale globally with these guys?
Well, really the idea for us is, I think Jérémy Genin was there on stage earlier today, and he talked about the ReOcean Fund and ECOncrete is a company that we are looking, or I would say even more looking at it now, because we are, I would say, hopefully close the deal very soon. It's part of one of our vertical. ECOncrete gather several impacts for us. The first one is obviously the marine biodiversity conservation, and secondly, it impacts the marine structure, which obviously is also something that you as people will look first when you look at it. And so it's really, as mentioned Maor, you can have a concrete example of what the blue economy and the investment into the blue economy generates. So it's really for us important to showcase a very good results on impacts and a concrete impacts for everyone.
Be concrete.
Very concrete.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.